Hi, welcome back to Serial Killers, the podcast all about the pests, diseases and weeds of arable crops. And today I was deciding which topic I should cover and research, and one of the diseases caught my eye as Dr. Sharp, and that was Sharp Eyespot. Puns intended. So Sharp Eyespot is a fungal disease of all cereals, and it is unrelated to another disease called eye spot. This is Sharp Eyespot. The good news is Sharp Eyespot is not as severe a disease as eye spot. So they're two fungal diseases, but they're both unrelated. And they both got the same similar names because they both have similar symptoms, and that's this eye spotting that can occur. But hopefully I'll tell you the difference between the two different symptoms so you can differentiate them, because it's very important. Sharp eye spot is nowhere near as bad as normal eye spots, but it can cause, some yield loss. So it affects all cereals, as I said. It's also reported to infect sugar beet, cotton, potatoes, and turfgrass. So, however, whether that is truly this species or a related species, I'm not sure. So many of you will be familiar with the term Rhizoctonia. This is a genus of fungal pathogens and very common. There's lots of them. There's the most common one or most famous one is Rhizoctonia solani, which obviously affects tomatoes and many other crops. This one is Rhizoctonia cerealis. Yeah. So obviously affecting cereals, and those are the crops that I mentioned. It's obviously a lot of fungi have two scientific names. And so its true scientific name it has another scientific name, which I'm not going to mention. Just remember it's a Rhizoctonia species, Rhizoctonia cerealis. That's all you need to know. Only absolute microbiology geeks need to know the two scientific names for this fungal pathogen. So as I said, yield loss is not as bad as eye spot or many other fungal diseases. It's a disease that probably you may not even bother to control, because the yield losses are like 0.5% down, and in extreme cases up to 25%. So, but not in the UK, not so much. Far more common to be on the lower scale. I think in Asia, it starts to become a real problem. And so it's thought that it occurs everywhere around the world, apart from obviously Antarctica, where you don't grow crops. But I've read one report that it doesn't affect crops in South America. But then I read another report that said that it's a problem now in Chile. So there's no escaping the sharp eye spot. It interacts with take-all. So you can get what I call potentiating or synergistic effects, where you get increased or ramped up yield loss if those two things are occurring at the same time. So the reason it's called sharp eye spot is because you get sharply defined lesions, as opposed to normal eye spot, where it's sort of like the dark lesions are the eye spotting, so they're shaped like eyes, is much more blending in. So I think it looks like what you get on like clematis, where a scale bug has been pulled off. It looks like some sort of scab has been removed from the plant, but it's not. That's just the lesion that it causes. It's got a clear dark margin around the epidermis, and that epidermis can be shredded. And then, unlike normal eye spot, it can be, higher up in the plant, so 30 centimeters up, whereas normal eye spot is near the base. So it's a fungal disease, and it overwinters as strands of fungi, what we call mycelium, on the stubble, and certainly on certain grass weeds as well. And it can produce sclerotinia, which are these large, well, for fungus anyway, large bodies that sporulate come the spring. And so they can be a source of infection as well. Certain forms of Rhizoctonia can also live as saprotrophs. These are fungi that live off decaying matter in the soil and then infect the plants. So Rhizoctonia solani can live off as saprotrophic fungi, just not interacting with plants at all, and then become a pathogen later on. Now, whether Rhizoctonia cerealis does this, I'm not so sure. Whether Sharp Eyespot can do this, I'm not sure. It's certainly a necrotrophic disease when it's infecting plants. And by this, I mean it gets into a cell, it kills the cell, and it consumes the contents of that cell. Hence the blackness of the actual eye spot and the tissues when it gets bad. That's as opposed to, say, a biotrophic pathogen, which is basically acting as a parasite on the plant, something like mildew or rust are example of biotrophic ones. It's thought that the disease is worsened or becomes more apparent when there's cool autumns and spring around 9 degrees Celsius. And you can get, that's getting worse diseases. But rhizoctonia is one of these ones where the plant can outgrow it in, especially at lower temperatures. So lower the temperature, the more it can sort of, unless the rhizoctonia is at the right temperature for it, it's one of these diseases where it thrives when the weather conditions right, but the plant can sort of outcompete. So plant can't necessarily ward it off completely. It just outgrows it. So severe infestation can cause whiteheading of the actual produce, and it can cause lodging. And both sharp eye spot and the unrelated eye spot both cause lodging because you're damaging the stem tissue. Okay, so this is acting on stems rather than leaves. It likes acidic, dry, and sandy soils. That makes a change. That fungal disease likes sandy soils. Normally, it's like clay soils where they prefer the sort of damp conditions. So liming addition will help with controlling rhizoctonia because you're going to increase the soil pH away from the optimum acidic conditions. And then, foliar sprays of potassium silicate will also make the cell wall stronger to resist the necrotrophic fungus as it tries to get in. And also it'll raise the pH of the leaf tissue, again, helping with control. Now, another reason I'm interested in sharp eye spot is because it's thought that one of the key factors in whether it gets a successful infection is the ability of the plant to produce chitinases and recognize the disease before it gets in. You get these things called PAMPs and MAMPs, which are pattern recognition molecules that the plant detects. And normally these are very important in biotrophic fungi because the fungus tricks the plant into not detecting the chitin on its cell surface. But this is thought to also occur in rhizoctonia, Ceralis, a sharp eye spot. And obviously that's an interest to me because at Eutrema we make chitosan, which is basically a way of telling the plant that there's chitin around. And if you've got diseases that are trying to turn off chitin receptors, we just go on and flood the plant with chitin and chitosan, and that overcomes that that strategy of the fungus. So that's important. What else can we say about sharp eye spot? They also secrete proteins to help with infection and metalloproteases, so metal-linked protein degrading enzymes. They secrete polysaccharides, and these all suppress the plant's own ability to withstand the infection. What's interesting about those metalloproteases, those metal-linked protein destroying enzymes, is that they're linked to zinc. And I find this interesting because normally zinc is like an anti-fungus metal. You think of zinc-containing fungicides. Zinc is highly toxic to fungus, but actually sharp eye spot needs zinc in small amounts to actually have its activity to produce these metalloproteases to trick the plant into thinking it's not there. So that's a really interesting one. So zinc is actually important for this fungus. Obviously, don't go without zinc for your crop. I'd never advise that. So it's not like a control strategy getting rid of zinc. It's just a quirk, an interesting feature. There's been a lot of study in China on sharp eye spot because it wasn't there until, or it wasn't a problem until maybe like 2005 to 2015, in which case it really ramped up its problem. And I tried to do some research on like susceptible species, and the only one that I could find was Wenmai 6, which is clearly a Chinese name for a variety. Whether that's got an English name, I don't know. And it's thought to be important, affected tillering in this Wenmai 6. And so we say it could potentially be a saprotroph in the soil, so it could be another disadvantage of no-till. Other interesting facts about sharp eye spot, it's a basidiomycete. So, and that's a type of fungus. If you're a microbiologist or you've done any microbiology, you'll know what a basidium mycete is. And then eyespot is an ascomycete. So that's very different. That's like saying the difference between a grass and a conifer or an orchid. They're completely different genetically. They're just, symptoms are the same. They have 2 nuclei per cell. So humans, plants, they have 1 nucleus per cell. But this fungus has 2, and the Rhizoctonia can have up to 5 nuclei per cell. That makes genetic study of the disease fairly difficult. There's a number of complications that come with that. As I said, it affects the vascular system and the sheath of the grass, and so that's where the lodging comes in. And it affects 9 million hectares in China as of 2015, probably more. And then obviously it went to Chile in 2015 as well. There are no resistant varieties according to the Chinese reports I read. However, perfectly acceptable for people to comment and say there are resistant varieties. And one of the interesting research areas the Chinese researchers were looking at was RNA-based products, whether these RNA is a similar compound to DNA, it's a nucleic acid, and there's this RNAi technology where you can interfere with the expression of genes in a pathogen or a plant or a human, and this RNAi technology could potentially be used to sort of knock out the pathogenicity genes in the fungus. So but for this to be sort of licensed and to be commercialized in the UK, it would have to be a very, very serious disease. So Sharp Eyespot is not going to be the first RNAi disease to get a product developed for it. It's probably going to be something like, blackgrass or fusarium, something far more problematic for cereal growing. So as I say, that's Sharp Eyespot. I thought I'd cover that. Normal eyespot, maybe I'll cover that next. Far higher yield loss. The lesions are lower down, they're darker, and they're not confined to the outer sheath of the plant. It penetrates through the stem, and obviously that's going to make it far more worse from that perspective. So that's serial killers for today. I thought I'd start doing more podcasts because it's coming into the spring, and to be truthfully honest, I'd like some more customers. Arable customers coming into spring, buying loads of our products like Phosphorus Liberator and Liquid Gypsum and all the cool things that we produce. I've just produced a biologicals program, actually, and it goes through and it lists all the different biological products you can put on a crop throughout the growing season. So if you'd like to receive a copy of that biologicals program for cereals, let me know and I will send one an email. I'll post one to you. I started just slapping them on farm gates as well. This is my new strategy. I used to give out brochures to farms, and I'd always struggle to find the post box for the farm because you might have the shed with the sprayer in, but does the farmer live near there? Who knows? The farmhouse might be, often it's not the farmer that lives there. So I've got this new strategy, and I've got these plastic sheets here that the documents enclosed sheets you have to get on parcels or pallets, and I just find where the farmyard is and just slap that on a gate. And I found it's remarkably fast how someone appears from round a corner as soon as you put one of those on someone's gate, because I think they think it's like a court summons or something like that, or an eviction notice or something like that. And everyone's like, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, hello. I'm just a biological crops input person." And so, yeah, that's my new strategy. And I don't know how people find me as soon as I slap one of those on, but people do come out of the woodwork as soon as I've started doing that. If it's too annoying, I'll stop. But for now, it also stops me from going into, as an introvert, I don't like going into farmhouses and going up to the doors, especially as there's lots of dogs that suddenly appear. But yeah, my sons find that hilarious because sometimes I take them to farms as we're traveling past them and say, like, we're looking out for cereal farms, not animal farms. And then we turn up and then they see me being attacked by about 3 or 4 dogs. And yeah, that's hilarious to them. But yeah, so if you're interested in applying for products that would control fungal diseases like cereal eyespot, we've got things like chitosan or silicates or salicylic acid, all sorts of wonderful products. Speak to you, Trima. Thank you very much.